Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. So this is going to be a bit of a rambly chit chat video where I chat about some of the biggest failures that we have had as a business and me personally in 2022. As you guys know, if you've been following the channel for a while, I like to keep things as transparent as possible so that people can kind of generally learn from my experience, the ups and also the downs. You know, I've been on YouTube for like 5.5 years now and been kind of documenting the process all this time, going from medical school to working as a doctor to quitting the job, taking a break from medicine, deciding to leave medicine for good while this YouTube channel has been growing and growing. And because I do these videos every year where I talk about how much money I've earned, I think it's probably easy from the outside to think of this as like, oh my God, like living the dream, everything is all rosy all the time. And it very much is living the dream, but everything is not all rosy all the time. And so I thought I would kind of sit down and talk a little bit about the things that have gone badly, the things that have gone less well, the failures, the learning opportunities from stuff that has happened in kind of the business this year. As usual, timestamps down below if you want to kind of skip around, and this is probably going to be fairly long, so what else? Also, failure is a bit of a weird word, right? Because, I mean, what is a failure? I guess a failure is where expectations don't match reality. It's like if you expect to, I don't know, win a gold medal and you win a silver medal, then that could be seen as a failure, but you're still a silver medalist. So I think a lot of the whole failure thing depends on your framing of the situation. And for me personally, I don't like to think of the word failure. I mean, this is like absolute standard in the field of personal development, but reframing failure as a learning experience instead of a failure. But hey, let's call a spade and let's call these failures, because why not? Even though there have been lessons learned from all of them. And just as an aside, this has actually been the first time in my life that I've actually seen a therapist, and I found one through BetterHelp, who are very kindly sponsoring this video. BetterHelp is the world's largest therapy service, and it's 100% online. And with BetterHelp, you can tap into a network of over 25,000 licensed and experienced therapists who can help you with a wide range of issues. To get started, you just answer a few questions about your needs and preferences with therapy, and that way BetterHelp can match you with the right therapist from their network. And then you can talk to your therapist in whatever way feels most comfortable to you. So it could be text or chat or phone or video call. I used video call personally. You can message your therapist anytime, and you can always schedule sessions whenever it's convenient for you and reschedule them if you need to, like I had to do once or twice with mine. If the therapist that you get matched with isn't the right fit for you for whatever reason, then you can switch therapists at any time with no additional cost. So with BetterHelp, you get the same professionalism and quality that you'd expect from an in-office therapist, but it's a therapist who's custom picked for you with way more flexibility on timings and scheduling and at a much more affordable price. So if that sounds good and you would like to try out a therapist through BetterHelp, then head over to betterhelp.com/Ali Abdaal, and that will give you 10% off your first month. So thank you so much, BetterHelp, for sponsoring this video. The first one is that we are going to substantially miss our revenue target. This year was the first time in the business that we've had like a target for revenue and profit and profitability and all this kind of stuff, especially as we've kind of grown more people in the team. It has felt like it's more important to have those sorts of targets. Whereas back in the day when it was just me, or even when it was a handful of us, especially when this wasn't my full-time gig, when it was a part-time side hustle, I just never really needed to have any targets or any goals, because it's just like, whatever, things are working. As long as things are fun and as long as things are working, let's just keep on doing this thing. But then earlier this year, and actually kind of towards the end of last year as well, you know, in discussion with various coaches and stuff, they were saying, you know, it's worth setting targets. Like, well, what are we actually aiming for here? And so at the start of the year, at the start of 2022, me and Angus, our general manager, got together and we were like, all right, cool, let's make some targets. We were like, you know what, we did like, I don't know, 3 million-ish last year, pounds. We were like, okay, cool, 5 million. 5 million seems like a good number. And then we did some financial modeling. We were like, all right, cool, to hit 5 million revenue, we need to hit all these different things when it comes to sponsorships and AdSense and course sales in particular, because course sales are the biggest chunk of our revenue. And I think this year, well, I'm filming this at the end of November now. I don't know why I looked at my watch. I normally have a watch on. Probably we're going to do around 3.3 to 3.5 million in revenue, which is still pretty good. Like, it's still utterly absurd. And if you told me it would be, you know, a couple of years ago that we'd be doing like 3 and a bit million in revenue, I'd have absolutely lost my mind. But it's not 5. It's not 5 million. So it's like we've got this kind of 1.5 million deficit, as it were, of like missing a target, which to an extent feels like failure in some ways, but also I don't really like thinking about failure. So like in my mind, it doesn't really register as failure, but hey, we're going to call a spade a spade. Now the real issue there was that when it came to the various financial modeling that we did as a business, it was based on hitting that 5 million target. So I like to aim for margins of 60%. just fairly arbitrary, but that seems like a fairly healthy margin. And so the theory was, if we can hit 5 million revenue, then 60% of that is 3 million, and so we'd have 3 million of profit. You know, profit is the number that actually matters. This is operating profit, or EBITDA, so pre-tax profits. So if for example, we made 3 million in profit, 20% of that would disappear on corporation tax, for example. So 3 million pre-tax profit was what we were shooting for. Probably we're going to end up with more like 2 million of pre-tax profit, which is, again, not bad, but definitely not what the target was. And I think the mistake was that we kind of assumed that, oh yeah, 5 million, that's a target, we're going to hit the target, therefore we have 2 million to spend. And in my mind, there was this like very false sense of security of like, oh great, we've got 2 million to spend this year. But actually we didn't have 2 million to spend, because like that was reliant on us hitting 5 million in revenue. And there was just part of me that just, having not done this before, just did not clock that, hey, let's keep our spending conservative and keep the figures that we're going for conservative, so that even in the worst case scenarios, we're still very profitable, rather than in the best case scenario, then we're aiming at that level of profitability. So the lesson that I've taken away from there is that it's all well and good having a goal, having a stretch goal, having a stretch target, but like halfway through the year when we realized that, oh my God, there's no way we're going to hit this revenue target, that was when me and Angus kind of got a spreadsheet together. We did like worst case scenario, best case scenario, middling case scenario. And that was when we realized, oh, okay, cool. Like we should have done this at the start of the year. Like it's completely pointless just having a single target. We should have made conservative estimates, made conservative budgets around, okay, what if our course only sells 10% of the places we think it does? What if we only get 2 sponsors a month? What if ... and run the numbers based on that? Because I think we probably overspent in terms of having a previous office space and stuff, just thinking that kind of the revenue would just continue to rise without us having to do anything. And I think partly one of the interesting things for me is that so far up until this point, it hasn't felt particularly hard. It sort of felt like every year, by just virtue of just doing basic things like showing up consistently and making videos, the business just kept on growing and growing and growing, and it never really felt like effort. Whereas this year, this last sort of 12, 18 months is the first time in this kind of journey of YouTube that it actually has felt hard. I think that's because it's only in the last 12, 18 months that I felt out of my depth in terms of what's needed to be done. Because to be honest, making YouTube videos, I never found particularly hard. Like I was good at tech. I knew how to teach myself video editing and cameras and stuff. I like tech. Teaching stuff on video, I never found particularly hard because teaching was my jam. Building the initial business to a team of like 2 or 3 people wasn't particularly hard because I'd kind of done that before with my previous business. And kind of getting into the 6-figure sort of up to £1 million revenue range also never felt that hard because I'd kind of done it before. But trying to go from 1 million to 5 million and trying to grow the team from like 3 to 20, and it's like, those were all like challenges that I've never faced before. And that felt hard. It was like, oh my God, like this is no longer as easy a journey as this YouTube thing has been to date. And I didn't have the experience, I didn't have the knowledge, didn't have the understanding of what it takes to run a business. And so a lot of these failures feel like a lot of learning opportunities as well. And I think the other thing interesting here that I sometimes reflect on is, you know, that idea of like happiness is expectations minus reality. And previously, when I never had any expectations or targets for the YouTube channel and for this business, it was like super smooth sailing all the way because anything was a bonus. But as soon as we started having targets and expectations, and now it's like, let's pluck an arbitrary number out of thin air, like 5 million, and let's try and hit that number. Now that, in a way, makes the business, at least for me, less fun. Because now it's about chasing an external metric that's outside of my control. And some people really like targets. Some people like the kind of, I don't know, adrenaline rush they get from like chasing a big target. But for me, I don't think I do. And I think for me, it's more like I'd much rather make less money and have a more chilled out time where I can do what I enjoy and still make decent money. Like, you know, 2 million profit is nothing at all to scoff at. But going for 3 million, 4 million, 5 million, you know, speaking to people who have done 10, 20 million in revenue with their businesses. And it's just a lot of work. And you've got to really, and I think to get to those levels, you have to really want it and also be really good at the thing. And maybe this is just me convincing myself, but I actually don't think I want it. This is another realization that I've had recently, which is really trying to answer this question of when is enough enough? You know, we were going for 5 million revenue this year. We're going to hit 3.5. Okay, cool. So let's say we hit 3.5 and 2 million profit. What about next year? Should we go 2.5? Should we go 3 million? Should we go 4? Should we go 5? Honestly, what I've realized is in conversation with like my coach and everything is I'm actually very like, this is a good place to be. Like, okay, this is gonna sound weird. Like if you're watching this in the video and like, you know, very much first world probleming, which is why it kind of feels weird to make a video like this. I think just on a bit of a tangent, back when the channel was making less money, it was kind of easier to talk about it because even when, for example, we were making like, I don't know, 10K a month, that's still like a huge amount of money. But 10K a month is not the same as 200K a month. Whereas like one of those numbers is like high but reasonable, 10K a month, and the other one is absolutely absurd for people that don't have experience of running a business. I'm hoping if you're here watching this, you will forgive me for throwing these absurd numbers out there and kind of thinking of them as like a negative thing. But you know, hopefully you can see where I'm coming from here. Like it did feel kind of weird whereby even though this year we're probably going to make like 2 million in profit, there's still part of me that feels like that's a failure because the business didn't grow as much as I wanted it to. But coming back to this question of like, when is enough enough? I've done so much journaling about this over the last few months. And yeah, I've realized that actually I am already at the point of enough. And I now don't feel like I have a need to grow the business anymore. Like there's always stuff we could be doing. I keep getting emails from people every day being like, hey, you could be doing X, Y, and Z. You could be hiring all these people. And certainly in the past, I thought that what I wanted was, I don't know, a team of 50 people and like a whole office and like all of this stuff because that seemed cool and that seemed fun. But where I've landed on now is actually I really like being a doer rather than being a manager or rather than being a leader per se. I don't really like running a business. I enjoy spending my time reading, writing, and teaching. And I enjoy making videos, I enjoy doing podcasts, I enjoy writing, I enjoy researching, I enjoy reading academic papers and figuring out how I can turn that into videos. I don't really enjoy like vision planning the business and setting objectives and key results for the team and setting key performance indicators and like managing a team and that kind of stuff. That is like objectively not fun. And so the thing that I've been thinking about a lot is this question of when is enough enough? Like, are we at that point of enough? In which case, let's optimize for really embracing being a quote lifestyle business rather than trying to grow beyond that point. And we've been working with a coach called Daniel Priestley recently, who's written a bunch of really good books that I've got on his bookshelf. One of the things he talks about is that generally, if you're optimizing for fun, freedom, and flexibility, what you want is a lifestyle boutique business, like a lifestyle business that's doing at least 100,000 revenue per employee per year, and that has like fewer than 12 people. Like 12 seems to be like the magic number, where beyond 12, you're kind of too big to be small and too small to be big. Up until you get to like 40 people when you've already got the systems and now you're like properly big. But between 12 and 40, what he calls the desert. And we were very much at that point where I felt like all of my time was being spent on like managing and like trying to figure out how to be a team leader and a bunch of stuff that I didn't actually want to do, compared to now where I feel like now we're on the other side of that. I've realized that I don't want more than a certain amount of growth. And so I actually can spend all my time either writing or filming videos. And like, this has only really happened in the last couple of months where I look at my calendar and everything on my calendar, I feel like, hell yeah, I'm super excited about this thing. Whereas before, a lot of my calendar was meetings and stuff, and the meetings were fun and it was nice interacting with people and it was like, felt exciting. But it just didn't, like if I could design my life however I want it, however I would want, it would not involve leading and managing a team, probably. Maybe leading a team if I didn't have to do anything about it. But like basically I enjoy doing rather than managing, and that was a realization that I had over time. But it does also feel kind of weird, this whole expectations reality thing. And so one thing that I think I want to do for next year is, yes, we're going to have targets, but I want those targets to be quite conservative, and I want the worst case scenarios to still result in a very profitable business that is very successful. Successful meaning profitable in my book, so that I can spend my time doing the things that I love, which is writing and filming and reading, rather than trying to manage a team and trying to figure out how to grow revenue. Because generally, like for me, I find I'm happiest when I'm just focused on how can I make a video that's useful to someone, rather than how can I optimize a marketing funnel so that we can make more revenue. Like that stuff doesn't really interest me like it used to. And the thing if I could just have a life where all I do is show up and just try and teach cool stuff and learn cool stuff, that's like me living my best life. And so that's kind of the setup we've now got into in the business, where Angus basically runs the whole business side of things. We've got like half of our team that's working on our kind of courses and our YouTuber Academy and stuff and trying to serve our students and customer support and all that kind of stuff. And then we've got the other half of our team, which is basically helping me to do the content stuff. So we've got Becky, our social media manager, who's like helping post stuff on Twitter and TikTok and LinkedIn and all of those kind of things. But essentially, half the team supports me in being able to make free videos and stick them on the internet, and the other half of the team focuses on kind of the monetization arm of the business. And the less I need to think about monetization, the happier I am, and the more I'm doing the things that I actually care about. So I guess long moral of the story from this is, if you're running a business, or rather, no, I'm not going to phrase it like that. I'm going to phrase it as like advice to myself, which would be conservative in your estimates. Try and keep your expectations really low when it comes to your business. And if you are having to hit particular revenue targets that are quite ambitious in order to sustain the business, that is a very scary place to be. And it is actually more fun having a business that's making less money and more profit than it is having a business that's making more revenue and kind of where the profit margins are going down over time, because that feels scary and unsustainable. Whereas, you know, most of us only need a certain amount of money to survive. If I could make 6 figures doing what I love, that's me living my best life. So trying to go very much beyond that point and trying to grow for the sake of growth is probably not the way forward. Okay, there's a bit of a ramble, but that's fine. I guess big failure number 2, beyond kind of missing revenue targets, was, and again, it depends on your definition of failure, but we ended up starting like a few major projects and then scrapping them. And this was really like annoying for everyone in the team, because they'd put in so much work into these projects. And then I was like, after a while, you know what, nah, screw it, we don't want to do this. In particular, there were 3 projects that we did and then scrapped. One was something called the Part-Time Creator Academy. The idea behind this was this was meant to be a YouTube channel that would teach people how to be creators. And the idea was that we would have a cast of people, like I'd do some videos, Elizabeth would do some videos, Jamie would do some videos, Gordon would do some videos, and we'd get various of our friends to do videos where we basically teach everything about how to be a creator. And we spent like, I don't know, 6 months planning this out and making the branding and hiring a logo designer to make logo, paying like 10K for different logo designs. And eventually, once we got around to actually making a handful of videos, that was when, for me, the realization was like, oh my God, like this is a lot of work. It takes so much work to run a YouTube channel, let alone 2. And if we're trying to start a second one and grow it from scratch, that was when I realized that actually this is not worth it. This is not the sort of business I want to run, where, you know, half of our team is spending all of their time trying to grow a completely separate YouTube channel just so that we can diversify away from me. And the team was already at capacity with like all the stuff we were already doing, and we added this on top of it. And I remember having a conversation with, I think it was like Angus and Jamie, and I just said, hey guys, what if we were to just scrap this project? How would everyone feel? And there was a palpable sense of like relief in the room. Of like, oh, it would be a relief if we scrapped this project. And so we scrapped the project, scrapped a few other things, tried a daily vlog for a month. In fairness, that was a 1-month experiment, and, you know, decided not to continue it after a month for various reasons. We had this thing called the Creatorpreneur, which we were trying to build up into its own brand. Again, trying to teach people how to be creators, like without me being overly involved. Because really, like one of the things that is a problem with a business like this is that it's all very reliant on me. Yes, quite passive income, but like there's really no such thing as passive income. And this business is reliant on me continuing to show up and continuing to make videos that are relevant to people. And if the relevance kind of suddenly drops, or if I get hit by a bus or something like that, or if for some reason I decide I don't want to make videos anymore, or if the audience decides, you know what, we don't really like Ali anymore, we don't want to watch the videos anymore, suddenly everything else in the business collapses. And that feels scary because it's not a very diversified, anti-fragile business. And so we were like, all right, cool, let's build business assets outside of being reliant on me as like a main driver. So can we get the team to be involved in teaching people how to be creators and stuff like that? And I think the theory was sound in that, of course, it's good to have a diversified business. But we ran into the problem of, you know, I think they call this line extension in like the 12 immutable laws of marketing, where you're good at one thing, and then you think, all right, cool, I'm good at that one thing. Let me try and be good at this other thing and this other thing and this other thing and this other thing. And it's really hard to even be good at one thing, let alone try and be good at multiple things, which is why a lot of companies fail when they start to go outside of their lane and they start to try new products and new things. And Mr. Beast talked about this in an interview one time. He said one of the biggest mistakes he sees creators make is that they get big on YouTube and then they start doing other things. They start like, I don't know, a restaurant thing or a software thing or a this or a that or a this or a that, and they neglect their YouTube channel and they realize afterwards that, oh, all of this like diversification that we thought we had if the YouTube channel dies, that's the foundation of the business that's gone, and then all of the other businesses die. And so I think we kind of fell into that trap of, and again, it's hard to call this a failure because these were all very much learning opportunities and kind of experiments. But I think we went too far down the route of line extension. And the problem that the mistake that I made is not actually knowing what I wanted. Part of me wanted this idea of a small lifestyle business where optimizing for fun, freedom, and flexibility, where I can do what I want, I can read, write, and teach, and just make decent money doing it. And another part of me was like, oh, but it would be really nice to have like a bigger business where we're doing maybe 10 million in revenue, whereby we have a bigger team, because that would be fun. And it's like, those are two very different kind of visions for a business and visions for life. And I was kind of pulling the team in two different directions. On the one hand, I was like, I only want to make a video when I feel like it. I just want to do what I love and make like reasonable amounts of money. And on the other hand, I was like, oh, we should diversify and all these things and like make all these different projects. And then maybe we could get 10 million revenue. Maybe we could sell the business one day. And I've realized now that I actually don't care about that second bigger thing. I care much more about kind of just having a lifestyle business. Fun, freedom, flexibility. And so a lot of these scrapped projects were a failure, I think had I known that the thing that I want ultimately is a lifestyle business where I don't have to work too hard and I can do what I want and just focus on helping people, we would not have gone down these different roads that we ended up going down. And I think another mistake there was essentially in planning too much. Like with this Creator Academy channel, we were planning it for like, I don't know, 6 to 8 months. I had the idea like a year and a half ago and only started executing on it like a lot later, thinking that, oh, okay, if we planned it really well, then it's going to go well. But actually, it's like you can't steer a stationary ship. Like you learn 100 times more by doing the thing than you do by planning to do the thing. And I think this is one of the good things that when we tried the daily vlog project, so we had like on my second channel, we did vlogs every day for 30 days. And I was very much thinking, let's plan this out, let's plot this out. But Gordon, our videographer, was like, you know what, screw it, let's just do the thing. And I'm sure we'll get data by doing the thing. And I was like, okay, cool, let's do it. And I think that bias towards action was really, really, really helpful because by doing the thing for 30 days and committing to it that, hey, it's just a 30-day experiment, we got so much data to ultimately decide that this is not the project that we wanted to go down. I think we could have spent another 6 months planning that, and it wouldn't really have changed the result. The issue there is that, like, every entrepreneur seems to have a bias towards action, but there is a trade-off between action and it's like this tightrope between like planning stuff enough and not planning stuff enough. Weirdly, it's like, I wouldn't want to say that the lesson there is just always jump to do the action, because always jumping to do the action means that, we've had various problems that have stemmed from me always jumping to do the action. But similarly, we've also had problems stemming from trying to plan too much. And so it seems like there's this like middle ground here, which you can never learn from a book. You can only ever learn from doing the thing and and running a business repeatedly, which is why, the most successful founders are like the second time founders. And which is why it's so valuable having like coaches and external advice from people who have run businesses who have that like tacit knowledge that comes from actually being in the thing, which you can't really get from doing a business degree or reading a bunch of business books like I've done. The other mistake that I've made definitely over the last kind of 12 to 18 months is getting the balance wrong between authoritarianness and democracy, as it were. Or like giving people autonomy and letting people do what they want in the team because people like autonomy and stuff, and that's good, versus me actually having a strong and stable leadership, having a clear vision of what I want. And I think, the mistake I made was in not recognizing the importance of me having my own like vision for the business, and kind of hoping that my team members would tell me what we should do. And they did. I would be like, hey, Gareth, what do you think we should do about X? And he would say something. I'd be like, okay, yeah, that's reasonable. Let's do that. And then we'd start doing that. And it's only like 3 months later that I would actually sit down and think about it, be like, do I really want to be doing that? And then I'd be like, no, I don't really want to be doing that. And now Gareth wasted 3 months of effort into this thing, which ultimately I should have just sat down and thought about and decided, actually actively figured out what the vision is. And this again seems to be like almost a tightrope that entrepreneurs walk, which is the balance between having a strong vision, but also giving your team autonomy to execute on particular things. And I think the answer there, the thing that reconciles it is it just is that vision piece. It's me as the leader, as the owner of the business. I need to know where we're going, and then I can be agnostic about how we get there. But crucially, I do need to know where we're going. And what I've realized, especially in the last few weeks in particular, talking to various team members about this, is that I thought that people want to work in a business where they have 100% autonomy, where they can just do whatever they want. And they've all basically said to me, it's like, no, we like autonomy, but we also like knowing where we're going. So given that it's your business, tell us where you want to go, and then we'll try and get there. And we'll have autonomy in getting there. But we can't tell you where you want to go because it's your business at the end of the day. And I think that was the mistake that I made in not being sufficiently vision-led as a leader, and instead sort of being pulled in multiple different directions by the opinions of various people around me. Whereas all anyone is doing is just sort of trying their best to give input. And then it was my job to basically synthesize all that, do a bunch of soul searching and figure out what I personally wanted, and then communicate that to the team, which I failed to do until very recently when I realized, actually, I do just want a lifestyle business rather than trying to go big. I think another mistake related to this, which is very much a lesson that I would recommend for any entrepreneur, is that it is very useful to spend at least several hours every week just thinking. This is a thing in the book Traction, which talks about how to run a business. And it's one of the 5 hallmarks of being an effective leader is having at least an hour every single week where you just sit down with a piece of paper and you just think about the business, and you think about the vision and you plan. This is sort of working on the business rather than working in the business. And I think with my kind of inexperience in managing and leading and stuff, I ended up in a place where for most of this year, a lot of my time was being spent working in the business and just being very in the weeds and on the ground. That was the doer part of me that enjoyed the writing and the filming and stuff, but also kind of micromanaging people and all this kind of stuff, and actually not making the time / not having the time. I don't like not having the time. Not making the time to take a step back and think strategically about the business as a whole. And again, this is one of the weirdly as I'm talking about this. Firstly, this is going to be super rambly, but I think people who have run businesses might vibe with me on this. The balance between strategy and execution. Because the common mistake that beginners to business make is too much strategy, not enough execution. Let me make my business plan. Let me make my website. Let me get business cards. Let me do my 1-page business plan, whatever. Let me do financial modeling for the next 5 years so I can pitch it to people. And most entrepreneurs who've run successful businesses know that all of that is just BS at the start, and it's all about execution. But then there also comes a point when you're scaling up where actually continuing to just try and execute is no longer the thing that will move the needle. And what you need is people who take a step back and think strategically. And at the point where you have traction, strategy and vision becomes really, really, really important. And I think I was very much in execution mode for way longer than I should have been, because that was how I got the business off the ground to begin with. And so like with a lot of these things, there's a sweet spot. And at different parts of the journey, the sweet spot changes. At the start of a business journey, when you're starting to build an audience, when you're starting to build a business, you just have to do the thing. You have to pick up the phone and ring people. You have to do all the hard work. It's not really hard, but you have to do all the work. But then as you're scaling up, you have to actively do less of the work and focus more on the vision and the strategy. And I think the mistake I made was not recognizing that shift enough and still focusing too much on just sort of the on the ground hamster wheeling. What course are we making this week? What sponsored videos coming out next week? How are we doing this? How are we doing that? How are we doing this? Which meant that when it came to making decisions about large projects like the Creatorpreneur or the direction of the business, I was like, I don't have time to think about the vision of the business. I'm focused on what's the next sponsored video. But actually what the team needed from me was for me to sit down and think about the direction of the business rather than worry about the next sponsored video. And it was only really a few months ago 2 months ago, I was on an airplane, didn't have Wi-Fi, I just had my iPad. I ended up doing 10,000 words worth of journaling to answer this question of where is this business going? And that was what prompted me to realize I don't care about growth. I care about optimizing for a lifestyle business where I can just focus on making content and the business sustains that rather than us trying to go for, multiple tens of millions of revenue, which, who knows if that could even happen. But I have actively decided after all this journaling that at least for now, that's not the direction we want to take the business. Okay, a couple other things to talk about. I think another big failure that I've had is a failure in delegation. Again, there's a sweet spot here. It's at the start of this YouTube channel and the business, I was doing absolutely everything myself. And then 2 years in, outsourced editing to Christian, and that was amazing. And then Angus came on and started helping with some of the research for some of the videos. And in those early stages, delegating freed up so much of my own time to focus on what I actually enjoyed and what I cared about. I think the mistake I made was about a year ago-ish, deciding, you know what? What's the bottleneck to producing more videos? Writing. Great. So let's just hire a bunch of writers and then they can write videos for me and I can just read from a teleprompter. And the theory was there. It's like, in theory, yes, of course, if writing is the bottleneck and, you know, I'm not that good a writer, other people can write. So it's like, great, let's get people to write videos and I'll just read from a teleprompter. The issue was that that I think was over delegating. It was abdication rather than delegation. And what I didn't realize is that A, I enjoy the process of synthesis and teaching and making videos myself. B, I think I'm quite good at it. And that's how we've gotten to this point. Like for the first 5 years, this 5 years of making this YouTube channel, basically all the videos are me just riffing on bullet points, riffing on stuff from personal experience and things that I'm very familiar with, so that I can kind of talk about them on video and kind of teach them or document them or whatever. And we did a few videos, or attempted to do a few videos, where other writers had researched and written scripts, and I was reading from a teleprompter. And that felt really bad. I would have to spend hours like tweaking the script just to make sure I actually liked it. And then I realized that, well, it takes me 6 hours to edit the script that someone else has wrote. Whereas I could have just drafted this video myself in like half an hour, 1 hour, 2 hours of research and just done it myself. And this is kind of goes against common business advice, which says that, hey, you should delegate more. And one piece of advice that I'd read is that if someone else can do the thing 70% as well as you can, then you as the leader should delegate that thing. But that's actually not black and white. And what I've realized is that there are some things in a business, in a team, in a company, whatever, that are like unique strengths, unique abilities, kind of core focuses. And there are some things where it is important for that thing to be done at 100%. It doesn't really matter. Like for example, if a writer is turning a video I've made into a blog post, it doesn't really matter if that blog post is, you know, not 100% the way I would have written it. But it does matter if the video is not 100% how I would want it, because the video is the core part of the business, and that's the thing that I am good at, and that's the thing that's gotten us here. And so the mistake I made was in almost over-delegating the videos. These days, we don't have anyone writing the videos, really, other than like some of the podcast videos that we have where kind of Amber and Inez will like weave bullet points together and kind of pick out sound bites from the podcast episodes to be like, okay, point number one, we want this sound bite, this sound bite, this sound bite. But I'll do the kind of filling in of like weaving them together. We're also kind of now in the process of hiring researchers, because I think there is value in having help with researching videos. Like there's all these videos that I want to do, but I don't have time to trawl through the scientific literature and find the papers myself. So if we hired research assistants, they could kind of help with that and kind of feed me stuff. But ultimately I've realized that the thing I want to do, and probably I have to do, is write the videos myself, because no one else can do that synthesis of knowledge and kind of pretend to be me. Like no one else can think for me, as it were. Again, this sounds weird. To me, it sort of sounds like I'm saying, hey, I have this special power, I have this special ability, no one else can can do this like I can. But it kind of is true. At least for this YouTube channel, the thing that people are subscribed to is my own thoughts and opinions, rather than the thoughts and opinions of a writer who I'm then reading out from a teleprompter. And I thought I could do the teleprompter thing, but we tried it once or twice, and it was just an absolute nightmare every time. And so I've gone back to writing all of the videos myself, basically. But now we're still trying to add some level of research and stuff. So still trying to figure this out. Like, what is the sweet spot of delegation? You might, if you're watching this and you haven't run a business, you might be thinking, well, of course you should just write everything yourself. But if you're watching this and you have run a business, you might be thinking, well, actually, there is value in delegation. Like it's important as part of scaling up. I just don't know. We're still trying to figure out the sweet spot of where I feel proud of the videos and I feel like they're actually good and that they're authentic to what I want to say. Like I really want to do a video about trying to figure out how to uncover your core values, which is a thing that's part of like ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy, and a few other kind of schools of positive psychology. But I don't want to be the one trawling through like 300 papers to try and figure out what are the interesting ones. I want someone else to trawl through the 300 papers and figure out the interesting ones, and then I read the interesting ones. Like stuff like that, where I think there's a level of delegation that's helpful, but not going to the point where I'm feeling like, oh, I can just read a script from a teleprompter and just someone else can write a video like I would. And I think the final kind of major failure I've had in the business, no idea how long this video is, but whatevs. Final major failure I've had is just actually in terms of my own time management, which feels weird given that I'm supposed to be the productivity guru time management guy. But as I got kind of involved and overly involved with like the micromanaging and day-to-day management of the team, I stopped making the time for the things that actually mattered, i.e. writing and filming. And actually this year we filmed, even though we've had a bigger team, we filmed like half as many videos as we did the year before, which is just a bit absurd because like, and I think all of it basically comes down to me spending way too much of my time trying to micromanage people and not enough time just sitting in front of the camera and speaking from the heart. Like this video has basically, well, has very little prep to it. I have written a few kind of bullet points of things I want to talk about, and now I'm just kind of talking about them, which is why this is a particularly long and rambly video. But this is how I always make videos. This is how I've been making videos for the last 5 years. I just pick a topic that I think might be helpful to someone, write a few bullet points, and then I just kind of speak from the heart. And I've been doing that for like 5 years. And then I tried being too businessy about it, too operationalized, too much of like, well, let's think about titles and thumbnails before doing everything else. Let's like write a script. Let's like craft the hook and all of this kind of stuff. And all of that overthinking and micromanagement with the team resulted in me actually not making the time to just sit down and film the videos. Similarly, before I used to spend some amount of my time writing. These days I'm kind of working on the book. Like the book is like the major project that's been in my life for the last year, since kind of confirming the book publication deal. And it's the thing that I've made the least amount of time for. And I had a moment with our editor, Rachel, a few months ago where she was like, hey, so, you're saying that this book is the highest priority thing in your life or in your work. But if you look at your calendar, it seems to be the lowest priority thing in your calendar. So what's going on there? And that was just so true. It's like every day it seemed like there was another urgent thing that I had to get involved with where I wasn't making the time for the things that were actually important. And so now what I'm trying to do is just like very much protect my writing time and my filming time. And if there's a call with someone, if there's a meeting, it can fit around those things. And if it can't fit around those things, then the thing does not happen. And I realized I actually could have done this 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago. I have always had control over my calendar since doing this YouTube stuff, but I've acted as if I haven't. And again, like Gordon, our videographer, would often say to me, I'd be like, oh, Gordon, like, I feel like I don't have time to do blah, 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 blah. And he'd be like, dude, you can decide your calendar. You can do whatever you want. Tell these people to go away. Like, whether it was external calls or even canceling on some podcast interviews that we were doing because I needed to film a video. I think I've realized this year in particular that it's my job to guard my own time, and people will be okay with it. Like, people are very chill when I say no to things now. But in the past, I used to say yes to a lot of things and then regret saying yes to them. And I still kind of have that problem to an extent. But now the calendar is blocked out where it's like 4 hours in the morning for writing, 3 hours for filming. Everything else can fit around that. And if it can't, then it doesn't happen. And so really, I think the key there that I would tell myself is figure out what are the most important things and actively protect your time for those most important things, because the urgent is rarely important and the important is rarely urgent. But the urgent things will take over the things that are important and not urgent, because urgent stuff always just finds its way into the calendar. Anyway, that brings us to the end of this video. If you liked it, if you've gotten to this point, I would love it if you can leave a clover emoji. And if you wouldn't mind leaving a comment as well, like, given that you've watched the whole video, like, what was the most useful thing here? Like, this has been long and rambly. I'm not sure to what extent this is actually useful for anyone, because someone said the other day, like I saw a video from someone being like, I don't watch Ali Abdaal videos anymore. And I was like, okay, interesting. I was like, why is that? And in the video, he basically said that, back in the day, he was more at my level. He was like a student and doing the thing. And this guy was a student, probably. But now that he's like kind of running this multi-million-pound business or whatever, now it feels like he's less like relatable to normal people. And I really can't fault that. It's like when I was in medical school, I learned way better from people who were like 1 year ahead of me than from someone who was like 10 years ahead of me, or like from the professor or whatever. And it's like these days I'm learning from people that have like $5 million, $10 million businesses. And I don't really read any kind of generic kind of basic business advice anymore because it's completely irrelevant at this point. And so it's more the advanced stuff. And similarly, it's like, I don't know to what extent continuing to make videos like this is actually helpful to people, because at this point where I'm like, well, 3.5 versus 5 million versus 10 million revenue and like all the issues with like leadership and vision and stuff, that's actually not relevant to, I suspect, the vast majority of people who watch this channel. So I'm not saying this because I'm like, please tell me these videos are valuable. I'm saying like genuinely, to what extent was this video useful? Like, what was the most useful bit? What would you have liked to hear more of? What would you maybe have liked to hear less of? Because I'm trying to figure out, like, I'm keen on kind of continuing to document the journey of growing this business, of building this business, hopefully, maybe not growing the business, maybe the decline of the business, whatever happens next year. I'm keen to continue documenting things, but I am also keen for things to be useful. So yeah, if you've gotten to this point, please do leave a comment like, what is useful about this kind of stuff? Should I keep on doing it? Or should I just continue with, I don't know, productivity, personal development-y type stuff? Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Shit. My God. Oh my goodness. My stool just collapsed on me. What the hell?